squirrel. All right, there we go. So I'm going to turn it over to Kelly. I'll keep an eye on the waiting room, and you get started.
Okay, thanks.
Kelly.
Yeah, I was really excited when Polly decided to do this because I teach contemporary artists. I love contemporary art, and I try and teach people of color and from different backgrounds. So I think this is really great for us to expand our reach to our students. So I have a lot of information to give you today, but basically my name is Kelly Kotlinski, and I just moved to Colorado from Chicago, like right when quarantine started. And but I grew up in Kansas, and that's where I went to school and everything. So that's how I knew Polly. But so I had to do remote learning while I was in Colorado for my Chicago school. I finished up the year with my Chicago school on remote learning, and I just got hired. So I was teaching pre-K through 8 for my Chicago school, and then I just got hired to teach high school here. So I'll be starting high school in the fall, and I'm really nervous about it, but I think it'll be fine. I'm going to be teaching photo, digital art, and animation, which are not my strengths, but I'm really excited to learn with the students as I do it. So like Polly said, my background is in printmaking, and I would be happy if you guys followed my Instagram page because I love having art teacher friends on there, and I will follow you back. So basically, I'm going to go over 3 lessons that I've taught. 2 of them were in the classroom, and I have photos of the students doing the work in the classroom, and one of them is remote learning. And they're all Black artists and contemporary artists. And so I'm going to go through 2 of them, and then the third one will make the project together, the collage piece. So I'm going to start off by sharing my screen. Let's see. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right, so I am going to share this Google Drive folder with you all, and it has all these different resources in it. So it has 3 PowerPoint presentations, which I'll be going through with you today, and then 2 lessons that are written out for 2 of the lessons that you can look through if you want. And then this is a really awesome resource that was given to me at a KAEA conference for one of the sessions that I went to, and it's called Representation Matters. And basically, it has just a whole bunch of art teachers have access to this, and they just go in and add artists that are people of color or gay or Native American, or so just any artist that isn't basically a white dude, you can add on here. And so it has the artist name with a link to like a website, an image of the work, what they identify as, and then different topics. So there's 56 pages on here, and I've added a lot myself, and I come to this whenever I'm like coming up with a lesson and I need to find an artist to include. So you can do Command F and search the document. So if you search like sculpture, then you'll see there's 20 different artists with that tag in there, and you can just kind of look through, like Kara Walker is sculpture, and then down here Elizabeth Catlett has done sculpture. So anything like that you can just kind of go through. So I love this resource, and you can add to it if you'd like, or just use it to find artists. There's a lot of Mexican artists as well. So that's in the folder that I'll be sharing with you guys, and you can kind of flip through that. So I'm going to start off with this PowerPoint presentation. So let me just do this. So this is a lesson that I taught on weaving, and this is an artist named L. Anatsui. And I'm sure you guys are familiar with him. He has work in, really big museums at the Nelson and everything in Kansas City. So he was born in Ghana. He's from Africa. He creates weavings and sculptures that are kind of like free flowing, and they're usually meant for the space that they're in. So he just kind of puts them together in that space. And he uses wood, clay, metal, but mostly recycled bottle caps. So I decided to do this lesson kind of on conservation and had the students use recycled materials. His work is referencing the post-colonial African cultural exchange, so you can go over that with your students as well, but I was doing this with third graders, and so I just kind of focused on the conservation aspect of it and him being from Ghana. So here's some examples of his work. They're just these really large tapestries that he puts together with these tiny little pieces. There's a piece, a scale piece. And so these are all like recycled bottle caps and trash basically. So it's really incredible. So here's a close-up of the little bottle caps and wrappers from the bottle caps kind of pieced together. So I went over with my students, you know, the idea of reduce, reuse, recycle, things like that. And we talked about how the project that we're doing is reusing materials. So I'm going to show you a little clip of a video that I showed the students. I'm not going to go through the whole thing with him or with you, but I really like to show Art21 videos. I think they do a really great job. So if you're not familiar with Art21, it's a contemporary, they have videos on contemporary artists. And they're usually short and really quick, so you can easily show them in your classroom. So I really like showing kind of like where the artist is from and the environment and them working in their studio, so students can like have that visual. And this has a lot of imagery of you know, what it's like where he's working in Africa. So I love students to see that. So I'm going to just kind of flip through this and show you a little bit of it. Let's see if it'll play. Come on. Is it going to work with? There we go.
The studio is located in the university town of Nsukka in southeastern Nigeria. It's about 10-20 minutes by walking north of the university campus.
So I'm just going to flip through so you can see these are some of the guys working in the studio.
There be absolute silence or as much silence as possible, because I try to impress upon them that a studio is a sacred place that you come to do some bit of reflection and thinking. Scatter them in the studio and then start picking what you need for each portion of the work. They put them together in a box.
So basically it just shows the process of making the pieces and how he kind of experiments and puts them together. And I really like to talk to my students about like, you know, what are they doing? Are they collaborating? How is it different if these guys are helping him make the piece and he's not making every single little piece? And, you know, what is he doing when he's piecing the blocks together? Like, he's experimenting, he's playing. He might not have like a set image in his mind when he starts. He kind of, it's a process. So those are some good things I think for the students to see. And then, you know, when I taught this, I had students, I asked them for like observations of what they saw in the video. And I had a student say, well, everyone in the video was Black. And I was like, yeah, why do you think that is? And we talked about how they were in a different country and people in Nigeria are dark skinned. And, you know, so those conversations might come up. And I think it's really important to talk about those things if they do come up. So next. So here is the in progress photos. So we did a weaving project and I had students bring in recycled materials and then we cut them into strips. So like cereal boxes, shoe boxes, plastic bags, things like that. And then we used yarn and all different sorts of things to just weave together, newspaper. So basically I had them do yarn every other time so that it would be tight and stay together. So if they were going to put a recycled piece in there, they needed to have yarn above it and below it so that it would kind of keep it in place and it wasn't all loosey-goosey. And then we had some of this gold foil in the classroom, and so we just went ahead and used that as well because Elle Anitsui's work has a lot of gold in it. And so this is how it ended up. And the students had a lot of fun with it. It was really awesome, and I gave them the choice to trim the edges if they wanted to or not. But they really enjoyed adding the recycled materials in there. So I think it was a really fun lesson. So I'm going to move on to the next one. Does anyone have any questions about this one in particular? No? Okay.
I was just curious what grade levels you were doing that with.
This was with 3rd grade. But you could probably do it with others and make the weaving a little bit more technical. All right, so let me get back to, next we're gonna look at Nick Cave. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Nick Cave. He is a Black male and he does these awesome sound suits. So I'm going to, so this is the lesson that I showed during remote learning. So basically what I did for remote learning is I just created videos and sent them to my students. So my videos were just pieced together, like me talking and presenting, and then videos from the web or photos, and then my demonstration video and things like that. So I'm going to show you the video that I showed for this lesson and just kind of skip through it like I did with this last one so that you can see. Here we go.
One of the questions while you're pulling that up is back to the weaving. If your students had weaving experience prior to this?
Some of them did and some of them didn't. So it was really hard because it was so technical that I really leaned on those students that did have experience. So I could tell immediately, like, okay, these 6 students know what they're doing. And so I would be like, hey, can you help this person at your table because they're really struggling, and I have like 3 students over here are struggling. So some of them did, but a lot of them hadn't. And so just using those students who could help out was really a good idea.
A great idea.
Yeah. So, and some students got really frustrated because it's so tedious and they didn't like it, and I just kind of had to be like, just try, you know. So let me just kind of skip through the part where I'm talking, and this is a little video of Nick Cave.
Email me, but just have fun with it, experiment and play, and be.
Sorry, the audio is pretty bad, but.
I'm a visual artist. An artist is someone that has the ability to sort of express a thought through presentation.
So basically, I have been wanting to teach Nick Cave for a long time, but I didn't have any idea how to do it in the classroom because I had the idea to have them create sculptures that could be worn, but I wanted them all to be different and I needed a lot of materials, so I didn't know how to do that in the classroom. So I was like, oh, this is perfect for remote learning. They can just use whatever is around their house. So I showed them Nick Cave's sound suits, and I was actually doing this with 2nd through 8th grade. I just required the 2nd through 5th graders to do a smaller piece, like just a bracelet or a piece of jewelry or something. And then the 6th through 8th graders had to do a larger, more elaborate piece. And the only parameters I gave them was to create a sculpture that could be worn. And I kind of gave them like bonus points if it made sound, because a lot of his sound suits do make sound. But I just told them to just get a bunch of materials and experiment and play and come up with some sort of sculpture that could be worn. So I showed some photos of his work. And then I showed a short clip of West African dancing to just kind of show where some of his inspiration might be coming from. And then I showed them my the piece that I made. So we'll see when that comes up in a second. I experimented with several different ways of wearing my sculpture, but I ended up putting it on my leg. So have fun with this project and so I got so many amazing responses to this, and in this PowerPoint that you're gonna get, I linked the YouTube video from the Knit Cave talk so that you could use that if you wanted. But here are some examples of what the students made. Some of them made jewelry. This is like a ball necklace, I guess. A skirt with all sorts of things attached to it. This student made a vest out of a paper bag and he put pictures of space on it and he was so proud of it and it was really cute. Just all sorts of fun, quirky things. This student, his made sound and he sent me a video of him shaking around and all the beads jangled together and it was really fun. Some sunglasses. This was really incredible and creative and awesome. So it was just really great to see them just experimenting and playing and coming up with all sorts of things. So that was really fun. Are there any questions about this one before I move on?
Did you do any sort of like attachment training or give them any sort of like ideas of ways that they could connect things together, Kelly?
No, in my video, I just explained kind of how I made mine. I talked about how I used tape and cut things and slipped them in together and stuff like that, but I didn't really go into depth on it. I just gave kind of a review on what I did for mine, and they just came up with their own stuff.
Cool.
In the classroom, I would probably do that because we'd have more time, but remote learning, I was only allowed to give them so much time, so I tried to make it quick. But yeah, that would be good. So the final one I'm going to talk about is G's bin. Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt you one more time. Someone else said, if you had to grade them, what did you have it based on?
Well, for remote learning, it was totally different, and I graded them on completion. So some of them did really, really simple, like just braided pieces of paper together and tied it around the wrist, and I just graded them on completion and said thank you because I had so many students who weren't even turning anything in. But in the classroom, obviously, I would have a little bit different parameters and grade them with a rubric. But for remote learning, it was so hard to just, I had to give them A's if they turned anything in. So.
And someone else just says it's a great idea for remote learning because, like you said, they may not bring things to school, but they've got them at home with their supplies. And
yeah, exactly. And you don't have like this big, huge pile of mess that you have to clean up and only have out for an hour. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah. Okay. So G's bin quilt squares. So this is the last one I'm going to talk about, and then we can make some artwork. So this one, G's Bin is in Alabama, and it's a small community of African-American artists who make quilts, and they have become world known. They're very famous and they're in museums and everything. I don't know if you remember the portrait that Amy Sherald made of Michelle Obama, and she's in that dress with kind of quilt looking pattern. That was the painter was inspired by Gee's Bend quilters. So this is becoming more well known. So basically I just went over with my students what a quilt is, and then we talked about what community means kind of as the big idea. And I asked them, like, what communities do you belong to and how do you participate in that community? What are your shared values? And why do you think a community would be important to artists? So this is just a conversation we had, a discussion in the classroom, but you could do this on a worksheet or anything like that. And then I talked about the quilting community and what a quilting bee is, where people got together to talk and gossip and make quilts. And then I showed them this video, and it's about 15 minutes long. So I'm just gonna, once again, kind of flip through it to show you some of the visuals. And I just love that you get to see like what it's like in Alabama and the sounds and the sights and everything. And so I'll just, really quickly play a little bit of this for you. So
we use them as quilting frame. We call them our quilting horses, and we put them in the frame, and that's how we quilt. There's 3 layers to a quilt, and you would have to quilt all those layers by hand.
When we be sitting around the quilt, we be talking about the Lord and talking about how our kids act, and we be praying, and we be singing, we be moaning, and then sometimes we be snacking on the quilt, have some fruit or something on the quilt, and we be snacking on the quilt.
So I originally got this lesson idea from a session at KAEA and then kind of transformed it, changed it a little bit. So basically I talked about Gee's Bend. They're an isolated African-American community along the Alabama River. Most of them can trace back their ancestry to a Petway plantation. And they started off making quilts for necessity, so to keep warm in their homes and things like that. And they were using all sorts of things from around the house, like rags and jeans and different materials. And then it just became this art form that they got well known for. And I kind of compared and contrasted the Gee's Bend quilts to regular quilts to show that they're a little bit different. They're kind of abstract and freeform. They're not as like grid pattern and geometric and put together as a normal quilt. So the reason why I wanted to show them this is because the assignment I did with them was pretty freeform. And if you're gonna do this lesson, you can change it up and make it more restricted and geometric, but I wanted them to kind of play and have fun. And then I kept this image up on the board the whole time they were working so that they could kind of look up and get ideas for shapes and designs and things like that. And so basically they put together 4 different squares, which is what we can do today. We won't have time to finish them all, but we can start. And then they used like a brush and glue to paint and start collaging them together. And this is how they ended up. So this is the student work at the end. And they all turned out so different, and some of them were really wild with it, and some of them were more put together. So it was really fun. And so I'm gonna show you a really quick demonstration video that I made for you guys specifically, and then we can start working. So basically, we're just gonna make like an oil pastel paper with just colors and whatever you want, and then cut it up and start putting our shapes down. So this is what I did. So basically I had to remind the students, like, you know, don't draw a rainbow, don't draw something, like just go at it with color and free form and have fun, and use your finger to spread around the oil pastels. So we called this making pretty papers. So each student made one pretty paper where they had to cover the entire paper with no white visible at the end. And then after that, I wanted to make it like a community thing because of the community aspect to the quilt making. So I took all of their pretty papers and then I cut them in half at the chopper, the wood cutter or whatever, paper cutter. And then I put them in a community pile and they had to come and choose two. So if they ended up with the one that they made, that was fine, but I wanted them to just choose two out of the community pile. And then I had colored squares for them to choose from, so they had to choose 4 squares. And for us, we're just gonna fold our paper into fourths like this and then trim them a little bit so that they are like smaller. So when you are ready, we can do this, but I'm just kind of showing you in this video. And then once you get your 4 squares, we are going to put them on, just to show you how they'll be laid out on the paper. I found this like scrapbook paper that I wanted to use. And so they'll be laid out like that. And then basically I just told my students to start cutting shapes and kind of working on their squares to make up designs. And I encouraged them to work on one square at a time because I didn't want them to work on a bunch and then lose their design because they didn't have enough time to glue it down. So I told them to work on one square at a time, get it laid out, and then start gluing their pieces down and then work on the next square. Not every student followed that rule, but they did pretty good. And so at the end, they would take all their pieces and put them in a little plastic baggie so that they were ready for the next class. But if you wanted to be more structured with like maybe an older grade level, I did this with 4th grade, you could make it like a geometric lesson and have them actually, create geometric quilt designs and things like that. So that's what we're gonna do. So if you want to use your oil pastels or crayons or whatever you have and make a pretty paper, we can start working together.
I've got a couple questions from the chat really quickly. Everyone loves this idea about cutting up the works and sharing. Rebecca says she's often frustrated with how precious students treat their work. And then Kristen was wondering, or she says she loves the community pile idea. Did you tell them before they made their pretty paper or after? Did some type A kiddos get upset that they didn't get to keep their own?
I did not tell them before because I honestly didn't think of this idea until after they made them. And so they made them and then I was kind of like, it would be cool if we shared. And so the next day I was just like, okay, I cut your papers up and we're gonna, share. And I had a few students be like, what? No, I wanted mine. And I'm like, well, if you get to the pile in time and you find yours, you can have it. But so yeah, a few students were upset. I think next time I would tell them ahead of time, like, don't even bother putting your name on it. We're going to share these. So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I just had a quick thought. My district hasn't really like fully decided what they're doing with the quarantine yet, but it sounds like they're going to probably have me on a cart and go into the classroom and also reduce the amount of time I normally have. So I'm trying to think like how I could do this with limited supplies. And I was thinking I do have from previous years, like if we make some kind of painted paper, like we study Eric Carle or something, we have some of those pretty paper scraps already. So if you don't have the time or the resources to do that in this circumstance, I think that's probably the way that I'll do is just give each of them a little stack of those leftover scraps, and I could still talk to them about how they use like the rags and jean, just what they have available there.
Yeah, I love that idea. That's great. Just use what you have. Definitely. And this would be an easy one to do on the cart, I think. Especially if, you could use glue sticks or, anything to kind of collage them together. So
Kristen has a great comment too. She says, you should still tell them to put their name on it just to make sure that they absolutely will not put their name on it.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it was so hard because they had so many pieces that they had to put their names on for this project. So they had the 4 pieces of paper and their pretty papers and everything. And so every time they started a new square, they had to put their name on it. And I had them put them on the back counter to dry. And there was always like 10 that didn't have their names on them. So yeah.
Did you find it was hard for them? I always find that when I'm having kids just do collage, there's always, 2 kids who want to absolutely add more to it with markers or pencils or something like that. Did you run across that at all, Kelly, or were they pretty okay with?
No, I didn't really come across that. I did have 2 students with the IEP that did use markers because they had textural, they didn't want to use the oil pastels.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but I didn't have any students worry about wanting to add to it with other materials. I did have quite a few students who didn't like this project and wanted to make, like, they just wanted to be done with it. They didn't like how tedious it was. So I really left it opened with, like, if they wanted to do really tiny little pieces put together or if they wanted to do bigger pieces. And so I had a few students that just like cut up their papers in a few pieces and glued them down and said they were done. And I had to kind of like encourage them to add more or try some different shapes. So it was kind of the gamut of people being into it or not. But they did have a lot of fun making their pretty papers.
And I love that. Someone said, are the backgrounds of the 4 squares construction paper that the pretty paper gets added to?
The colored paper squares is construction paper, and then the white paper that they glued them down on was like a heavier weight, sturdier paper. So yeah, I just cut up a bunch of squares of different colored construction paper and had them choose what colors they wanted.
I did a similar lesson, I think with 4th grade one year, and I just had them choose a piece of construction paper that was their background. So it kind of would be a simpler way to do it if you guys need to make it, fewer pieces of paper to keep track of. But they just had a piece of construction paper for their background, and they were able to use, pretty papers, which I like that term, by the way. That's a lot more fun than scrap papers or painted papers. So they had that, or they also cut out of magazines, just looked for colors and texture. And so I think we kind of talked about geometric shapes because that was a big push for their assessments, but they kind of did free-form-ish geometric shapes. I wouldn't let anyone use a ruler. I'm like, nope, you just got to wing it and loosen up a little bit. So they cut, triangles and rectangles. And we talked about how in the quilts, they aren't perfectly straight edges. And they arranged it so they had kind of the negative space from their construction paper showing through. But yeah, they were really fun. It reminds me a lot of this, how you did it.
Yeah. And, when I was teaching this lesson, I was like, I wonder if I should have put restrictions on, like, you can only use squares, rectangles, triangles, that sort of thing, because some of the students had a hard time coming up with what shapes to cut out. So I think next time I might show them, like, you can, like, draw shapes on the back of the paper and cut them out that way. Because when I taught this, I was just like, cut out shapes and glue them down, piece them together, so some students might be better with a little bit more instruction. But I do like the idea of doing just one big piece of paper to make it a little bit simpler. That's a good idea.
This is slightly off topic, but with the question of being on a cart and pushing into rooms and stuff, what other art supplies are you all in general finding does a similar thing with blending that paint does that isn't paint? Like, I also love oil pastels, but then I've got the messy finger problem that kids somehow like can't stand. And to be honest, me too, but Any
I
other?
don't have an answer for that, but I was just thinking that I've been trying to base my lessons that I'm planning off of what I can sanitize easily.
Yeah.
And if anyone has any idea on how to sanitize an oil pastel, I would love that, because otherwise I've like completely cut it out from the first quarter, first semester even, because I don't know how to sanitize those properly.
Right, and those aren't a supply that kids are going to have necessarily in their own like classroom supply stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just, it's just a brainstorm. I'm just wondering if we just get squirty bottles. You know what I'm saying, with different colors in them, maybe watercolors, and then they can,
Oh, that's
you
a good
know,
idea.
you know what I'm saying, and then they can just watch it happen, and that way you can just take the bottles back to class and sanitize them. Just a thought.
Yeah, squirty bottles. Plus, that'd be fun to squirt, and then suddenly it's all over the classroom. But I'm elementary, so.
I'm just brainstorming because I'm like in a cart too. I'm hoping not, but it sounds like they may be putting us on carts too at some point.
That gave me an idea, like, and I think it would probably work fine too, to take something like a coffee filter, and even maybe have a little bit more of a fabric feel to it. They could just color with their markers, because markers is probably something they have in there already in their classrooms. And then, I mean, even if necessary, we could take it back to our room and just drip the water on it, and then it would bleed, and you'd get the blended effect that way.
That's true. Yeah.
Megan says she's traveled from room to room for 7 years, and the quick sticks can easily be sanitized. I love quick sticks. I am with you on that. I wish they weren't so pricey, but that's me.
Yeah, because those just have like a hard plastic shell, right? You can just wipe those down.
Yeah. And and Megan says Michael's has their own brand of quick sticks. That's good to know. Katie says, I'm not sanitizing oil pastel because I can't figure it out, but I'm doing something similar to a library checkout for supplies. They have to wait 72 hours before I use them again. Oh, that's a good idea.
I guess I can stop sharing.
I found some off-brand tempera sticks from School Specialty when I did my supply order, and they're pretty comparable. Like I use them interchangeably.
Cool.
And if you haven't used them before, it's basically like a glue stick, but the inside is, Polly has the longer ones. But it feels like a glue stick, only it has tempera in it, and it dries in like 60 seconds, and they're amazing.
They are, yeah, I agree. They're totally, I love them. These I got, holy smokes, guys. I got these at Hobby Lobby. I don't know if you can see. $3.24.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And it was like some crazy, like, I'm like pointing to it, like, look at how awesome I am. It was some crazy sale. And then of course I like don't hardly use them because I buy the art supplies and then don't use them. Are you guys like the same? Because I don't want to use them.
They're so precious.
It says kids can wear gloves. Yes.
Are there any other high school teachers on here? Yeah. What do you guys teach in high school?
I teach one high school class in the morning, and then I have to travel to my elementary building. So my high school class is beginning level ceramics, which was a real nightmare to try to teach in the quarantine because no one had clay or kiln. So
yeah.
Holy smokes. Katie Morris could be a good resource for you, Kelly, because she does graphic design also. Katie, what else do you do?
My high school classes, 3 of them are graphic design, but it's sort of like an art one merged with what you would think of graphic design, since the competencies are actually don't say anything about like using a computer, like the design concepts. For a second I thought I lost you guys. Everybody froze for just a second. So I have 3 graphic design sections, one that's computer graphics, which is actually what you would expect for graphic design, and then I have one advanced art, which is whatever we want it to be. Then I have one middle school class, 8th grade is first semester, 7th grade second semester, and then I have one elementary class a day. And that I might see them 9 times a year. I might see them 18 times a year or 12. This year, I have no clue. We'll see what happens.
Wow.
Yeah. That's
And
interesting.
Tara also does high school, drawing 1 to advanced and painting 1 to an advanced. Rebecca teaches ceramic sculpture, design crafts, holy cannoli, and intro to art.
Wow.
Look at all you hats. All the hats you all are wearing.
I teach ceramics 1, 2, and 3, and intro to drawing, and 1 communications class. Just throw that in there. I had a different life before I came to art. So, but with my ceramics, I went to a lot of found object art. So I did a lot of stuff off of the shared art teacher deal. Got some ideas off of that. So I did do like, everything was like 3-dimensional, but it was all found object art of one sort or another, and I'd link it to an artist. So we did like Andy Goldsworthy art and went out on a nature walk and found stuff and made artwork. And then I did edible food sculptures, which was pretty fun. And so I had some fun stuff with that. We did cardboard art. So they did relief cardboard. So that was pretty fun. And then, oh gosh, what else did I do? More than that, but now I'm kind of drawing a blank. I'm on summer mode.
Right.
Yeah, we did for remote learning. I did some found object art mandalas, and there was a lot of food in there. Like a lot of students did donuts and stuff. It was really funny.
Oh yeah. Oh, I had some toilet paper roll art that was really fun, that everyone had to save their toilet paper rolls. And I had some awesome things. One student used a whole bunch of them and tightened them up and made this animal that was incredible. And I said, oh my gosh, you got to save that for Scholastics. We have to enter that in Scholastics next year.
Cool.
So I hope and another one did a hand out of toilet paper rolls. It was very cool.
Awesome.
So I was real pleased with their creativity.
I love the sharing of the pretty paper because it goes back to that idea of community, Kelly.
Yeah, I really liked showing them that video of them all working on one piece together. It wasn't like the artist came up with the idea, but everyone created it together.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have that community aspect.
Did they ask questions about who gets the quilt? Like, were they interested in?
No, I never had that question, but that's a good thing to talk about. In the video, it does show them walking through the gallery with their quilts on the wall. So they are talking about it in the art gallery. So I asked them afterwards, like, where were the quilts? Like, they weren't on a bed, you know? Let's talk about having a quilt in the gallery and what that means. So
there's a rug. I do some I'm happy to be a museum educator at the Nerman. Shout out to my boss, Karen Garrity Folk, who's on here. But there's a rug that's also, it's hanging, and that's a great thing to talk about. Like, why this rug that we're so used to like stepping on rugs, why is it hanging on a wall in a museum?
Yeah.
One of the videos I showed when I taught about them, they talked to one of the ladies and she said, we didn't know we were making art. We were just making quilts. And I talked about when they got discovered and like how it just kind of blew their minds that people liked what they were making and thought so much of it. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And you could even go into with your students like untrained artists and, that whole thing, folk art. Because they do talk about in the video like where they get their inspiration from, and they're usually just like it just comes into my head. Like, I don't have a concept. I just like how this looks, you know? So I can have lots of good conversations with them.
I also love that you put that sort of reference on the board for them too while they were working, because that there were lots of different shapes, and I love that there were some circles in there also. And sometimes you're right, kids are just don't know where to start. I like that.
Yeah.
That's like an inspiration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I did have some students make designs like faces or fruit, like things like that. That was really fun. So I liked how they all came out very different. And I didn't have time to do this, but I wanted to hang them in the hallway all together as one big quilt. I thought that that would be a good idea. Has anyone started cutting and gluing?
With you mentioning hanging them all together, that might be really nice this year, especially if we can get a hold of, like, some of my students will be e-learning and some of them will be in person. If we could get a hold of the e-learner stuff and display it together, then still kind of have like a unified feel. I think they like to be included in that way.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think whenever we are back to normal and back in schools, it would be such a good idea to do like whole school art projects to bring us all together.
Yeah, with a big idea of community, especially, not with as someone in my school thought would be great. Like everyone could just like put their fingerprint on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
No.
You mentioned how they were using whatever they could find. I really wish I could remember what this video was that I showed before. They talked about how some of the fabrics they got were just like donated. They were scraps that they could find. And then my favorite thing was they made quilts out of the back of jeans, because the front had holes, but the backs were still good. So they used that. And they said like, oh, this pair of jeans my daddy wore when he was able to vote for the very first time. So there was some cool stuff there too about like the meaning in the fabrics, and then being able to keep them, you know, for that special connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love those t-shirt quilts for sort of the same reason. You know, you've got all these t-shirts from all sorts of things, and you hate to throw them away because you can remember them, but you know, I like that.
Yeah, there's so much memory tied to them.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to share what they're making?
Andrea threw something up a second ago.
Oh, awesome.
I'm done.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah, that's fun.
That was fun.
Woohoo.
Ooh, Rebecca, that's fun.
Ooh, Tina, I like that you're like overlapping and putting your shapes everywhere.
Yeah, I've got some 3D things sticking up off of there. I like to have things sticking out.
Uh-huh.
Oh, cool.
Tina showed us her collages yesterday that she's been working on. Is that sort of your primary medium, Tina?
Well, I love textiles. I love to paint. I quilt too, so. Inks. I'm getting into encaustic. Does anybody do encaustic painting?
That overwhelms me. Just can't.
I don't know if it overwhelms me or not. I haven't started yet, so I might be
hot
overwhelmed.
wax. I'm like, I just don't think I can get behind that myself. Like,
I've done some encaustic. It's pretty rewarding.
What do you like about it?
I'm
just too much of a spaz. I think I'd.
Well, let's go get a couple pieces so I can explain.
Cool. I would love to see that. I hear you have to ventilate well because of, I guess, air quality. I don't think you can do it in schools.
I think, is Amanda still on here? Amanda, you kind of did encaustics, didn't you? Like on a griddle with crayons?
Okay, so I actually taught encaustic to one of my AP students when I taught high school out in Utah. And she entered it in the state competition, and it was one of the top 25 pieces that went in a traveling show. So it's kind of difficult, I think, to do in a big classroom setting. But I think if you have dedicated students and you want to work with them after school, like I did with my AP students, I found that worked very well. But this is a piece I did.
Oh,
And you can, well, this piece here was done on newsprint with Conte crayon. And then I did my background. Then I put that on, put a coat over it. And then you can use the pen. Oh, did my video go?
yeah. Or you're too, like the light went wackadoodle.
Oh, there we go. So you can use the pan pastels, right, if you use those. And you can get a little bit more detail too. And then I played a little bit with a little bit of gold leaf. And then this here. And okay, so I don't know if it's legal in the school or not. It was a shellac burn. So it's kind of, you know, it is actually on fire, which we loved. But it makes that really neat effect. But this is just one of them. The other ones I have kind of some other places, but I think they are really fun.
And is it, tell me about the texture. Like, it's really, that's one of the things that's interesting to me, is that it's really, it's got kind of a fun texture. That's cool.
Yeah, like I said, that texture is the shellac burn, where it's kind of the open flame, right? And then that's just the encaustic. This was the last layer. And then, like I said, this I did separately on newsprint, the outline. Then I did the pan pastels after I put it on here with the coat of wax. So you have the wax that's not dried yet, you know, and you got your heat gun.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, yeah, it's a process. But anyway, really fun, and I think the results are pretty rewarding.
Thanks for sharing that. Karen put in the chat some awesome artists that are in the collection at the Nerman who are also awesome contemporary weavers.
Awesome. Thanks, Karen. I'm going to look those guys up. Holly, you want, should I have everybody put their email in the chat, or are you going to send stuff out? Like if I share that Google Drive with you?
If you want to put it in the notes where you put the supplies, that'd be awesome.
I'll do that.
Because that resource, Kelly, that you shared with the representation, that was fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. I use it often.
I bet. Oh, Jennifer is saying that we are doing a virtual quilting bee. That's totally true. Fantastic. Yeah, I bet I would use that a lot too, Kelly. That's a cool resource.
Well, someone was saying something about fingerprints, and there's that Check Close finger portrait of Fanny. It's at the National Gallery in Washington, D.C. If you look it up, and it's this portrait. Actually, I looked it up on my phone. I don't know if I can show you. There we go. And that's all a fingerprint.
Oh, wow.
And when I walked in to look at that the first time, I thought, oh, wow, look at that. And then I walked up closer and closer, and you could see all of his fingerprints. And I thought, whoa, what we talked about yesterday with, you know, collaborative art and everyone doing the squares and putting it together, you could have kids actually do their little squares with fingerprints, and they could do it like a value study. Some might draw something that's really dark and some really light, and you could get different values, and then would be kind of a cool deal.
Yeah,
to put it all together.
It'd be interesting to do something collaborative with fingerprints, especially right now, because we can't touch things and touch each other, and you know, it's just like, that's an interesting concept.
Has anyone run into their students like out in the grocery and things? You know, years past, when summer would hit and then you're at the grocery store and your students would see you, I mean, mine are middle school, but they will run up and hug me. And it's like I don't go to the grocery anymore because I'm one of the at-risk people. So I have groceries delivered, but I thought, you know, what is that first day back gonna be like? I think we're just gonna like cry all day.
Oh.
And even my first day of remote learning, I know their little faces are gonna pop up on that screen again, and I'm just gonna cry like a baby. So
Yeah,
it's
the
a
not
rough
hugging
year.
elementary kids is gonna be tough.
Yeah. Vicky, your piece looked really cool.
Oh, I missed it.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Oh, fun.
Awesome. I love how everyone's ends up looking so different.
I missed it. Could I see the piece again? Oh, hold on. Let me snap so I can see it in big. Well, is it going to do it? Oh, I can't see it big. Well, it looks cool on the small screen.
Katie Morris, I want to see yours again.
Ooh.
Very fun.
Ooh, pretty.
Awesome.
I finished mine too.
Ooh, beautiful.
Oh, very fun.
So Kelly, is that on, like, I'm getting ready to lay mine out. So you have a full sheet and then you have 4 smaller squares
So
underneath, correct?
Yep. I used cardstock scrap paper and then the yellow squares on that and then the collage on top of that.
Okay, thank you.
I really like your half circles. Those are cool.
Does anybody else do like demonstration videos like I showed for mine? Because I feel like that is so helpful because you can just talk over it while it's playing. And you don't have to like think while you're making and doing the demonstration. That's been a big game changer for me.
I definitely did that during e-learning. I like recorded all of my videos and then went on to the whatever the Apple Movie Maker iMovie thing and just edited it down and then posted it. And then they could watch whenever they want or pause. I'm thinking about incorporating it maybe even this year, just so I'm talking less and, you know, not breathing out as much, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, then you're ready to go. Like if you have to go back to remote learning, you've got things that are prepared already.
Mm-hmm.
So I've thought about doing that too, making some videos and getting things ready that are just already for remote use. But then I thought about, we've talked about hybrid, and I thought, okay, I'm teaching ceramics. Do I have everybody carry their little bucket of clay home? You know, we use those big ice cream buckets to store our clay in anyway. And then I thought, oh, people are going to forget their work or it's going to get damaged or dried out. And I thought, if we're there 2 days a week, maybe we have a ceramic project for in class. And then when they're out of class, they have a remote lesson. And I just take longer on everything else. You know, I mean, give them more time. So I've been pondering that, and I'm going, oh, am I just, then I'm kind of prepared, I don't know, for going straight to remote, but I keep going back and forth. I just have them take their clay home and do one thing at a time. What are you thinking? I don't know. It just.
I know, it's so hard. Like I had a meeting with my new coworkers, the other teachers the other day, and we were just talking about like, if we are fully remote, then we just kind of have to lower our standards a little bit, I guess, and not do as many projects or as in depth because, you know, it's so difficult. You don't know how much work they can get done. And
Last year was really difficult because my school district closed in the midst of my ceramics lesson. And so I had, 160 pieces that were in process. And then we never went back. So at the end of the year, I had to go in and wrap up 160 pieces so that the kids could drive through and pick up all their belongings they were disappointed because we didn't get to fire, we didn't get to glaze. So I'm apprehensive about doing ceramics at all because I don't know how to implement that and not have the kids be disappointed.
I know. We had a bunch of things that I had loaded the kiln for glaze firing just before we left for our break, and then we never came back. So I did get the opportunity to go up and fire that. And then I had a whole shelf, like over 100 pieces of greenware. And so, and I'd had students do like, they had to do a Google process like portfolio for me. So they had to take a picture of their greenware prior to firing it, and then take a picture of their, several pictures from different angles. And then that was one way to get them to put their names on the bottom, was they had to take a photo of it. So they had to do like airplane view and then 4 side views and a bottom view. And so it was those that really followed through and did their Google photos like they were supposed to, I could identify their work. And then I went online and took a survey for the greenware, and I said, will you commit to picking this up and taking it home? If it doesn't have glaze on it, you could paint it, or you could bring it back next year and we'll glaze it when we're face to face. Or are you just done and I'll recycle it? And so I kind of just did that, and I only fired, then it took a long time to sort them all out, but I only fired what kids would commit to, because I thought, I don't want to have all this greenware in my classroom stored. I don't have, it was.
And that's so disheartening when you do all that work and then it like ends up in the trash or,
So at least it was just like really kind of one project for most kids in the greenware phase. So it wasn't like the end of the world, but
my principal wouldn't let me fire at all, so that's a challenge. But I'm thinking I might switch to air dry clay, or what if I just have the kids do a flower sculpture at home? I think it'd be better if the supplies were manageable, something they have in their kitchen.
Yeah. And if you're going to be at school, you could have paper mache. I'm just trying to think of a lot of things that we could already do. I don't know.
Well, my middle school kids can do paper mache at home.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking it's going to be a kitchen sculpture deal. I mean, between that and recyclables, I think they can do a really nice, solid sculpting unit just with recyclables and things from their kitchen.
Right. Oh, yeah, definitely. So.
Karen made a comment in the chat back to the quilt. She said, I was having a problem trying to make everything symmetrical and matchy-matchy with my quilt collage, which is what I totally did. So I decided to use all the scraps from shapes I cut out, so they were different shapes I had to contend with, which goes to the big idea of using all materials available.
Yes. Actually, the session that I got this idea from, Polly, I love that. She
matchy. You see,
very cool.
Oh yeah.
The person who I learned this from, she did make a requirement that the students had to use all of their pretty paper. So they had to use all of their scraps so that they would get that experience. But I just told them that they had to have some sort of recurring shape throughout all 4 of them to kind of make them cohesive.
Oh, that's a good idea.
But I know this is my session, but I have to hop off because I have to relieve my husband from watching our son. So,
Kelly, this was awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Kelly.